The gate was cold that night. Dora Reyes had her hands wrapped around a mug of black coffee, standing on the porch of the Iron Magnolia clubhouse, watching the fog roll in from the highway. It was the kind of quiet she had learned not to trust. 22 years on the road taught you that. The quiet never lasted. She heard it before she saw it. A small sound. Not a knock. More like a scratch. The kind of sound a person makes when they're not sure they're allowed to make any sound at all. Dora set her mug down slowly. She walked to the gate, and what she saw on the other side stopped her cold. A little girl, maybe 7 years old. Brown hair stuck to her face from the rain. A thin jacket that was never made for weather like this. One shoe, just one. Her left hand was wrapped in what used to be a white sock, now dark with dried blood. And in her right hand, held against her chest like it was the most precious thing she owned, was a small folded piece of paper. The girl didn't run. She didn't scream. She just looked up at Dora with the kind of eyes that don't belong on a child. Eyes that had already seen too much. She held out the note. Dora Reyes had faced down rival clubs. She had ridden through 3 hurricanes. She had buried brothers and sisters and kept moving because that's what the road demands. But something about this little girl standing alone in the rain at 2 in the morning, holding out that piece of paper like it was her last hope, that cracked something open in Dora's chest that she hadn't felt crack in a long, long time. She opened the gate. She took the note. She read it. 3 words. That's all it said. 3 words written in a child's handwriting. Crooked letters pressed hard into the paper like whoever wrote it needed to make sure they would never be erased. Please don't send me back. Dora looked up from the note. The girl was still watching her, waiting, like she had delivered the most important message of her life and now all she could do was wait to see if it worked. Dora Reyes crouched down to eye level, right there in the mud and the rain, leather jacket and all. "What's your name, sweetheart?" The girl swallowed hard. "Lily." "Okay, Lily." Dora kept her voice steady, the way she kept it steady in every situation that was about to require every ounce of control she had. "You're not going anywhere tonight except inside. You understand me?" Lily looked at her for a long moment. Then she nodded once, small and certain. Dora stood up, put one hand gently on the girl's shoulder, and walked her through the Iron Magnolia gate. What none of them knew yet was that by morning, everything was going to change. Inside the clubhouse, the night shift was Rosa and T-Bone. Rosa Vega had been with the Iron Magnolia for 11 years, a former social worker from San Antonio who had found the club after the system she worked for failed her in ways she still didn't talk about. T-Bone was Marcus Webb, 6'4", covered in tattoos from his neck to his knuckles, and absolutely the first person you wanted in your corner when things got serious. He had a daughter of his own, 8 years old. Her name was Grace, and he carried her picture in the front pocket of his cut every single day. Rosa took one look at Lily and went straight into social worker mode. Warm blanket, dry clothes from the lost and found box they kept for exactly these situations. Hot chocolate with extra marshmallows because Rosa believed that hot chocolate with extra marshmallows was a language every child understood. T-Bone stood back, arms crossed, jaw tight, watching the little girl with the kind of focus that meant he was already processing everything and keeping it inside until he knew what they were dealing with. Dora pulled Rosa aside while T-Bone made sure Lily was settled. "She walked here," Dora said, "in that condition, with one shoe." Rosa looked at the bloody sock. "That hand needs to be looked at. I don't think it's deep, but it needs cleaning." "I'll call Doc Martinez." Dora pulled out her phone. "Before I do, and look at her jacket." Rosa looked. There was a bruise on the girl's collarbone, just visible above the neckline, yellowing at the edges. A few days old. Rosa closed her eyes for just a second. When she opened them, they were steady. She had been in this exact moment before, professionally and personally, and she knew what it meant. She had learned to hold the emotion in her chest like a stone and keep moving because the child in front of you needed a person right now, not a reaction. "I'll sit with her," Rosa said. "I'll make the calls," Dora said. Doc Martinez showed up 20 minutes later. His real name was Victor Martinez, and he wasn't actually a doctor. He was a retired paramedic who had ridden with the Iron Magnolia for 6 years after his wife passed and his kids grown. and the silence of his house became something he couldn't live inside of anymore. The club gave him purpose. He gave the club someone who could handle exactly this kind of 2 a.m. situation without asking questions that didn't need asking yet. He cleaned Lily's hand. She had a deep cut across her palm, the kind you get when you catch yourself on something sharp while falling. She didn't cry, not once. She watched Doc Martinez work with a quiet focus that made everyone in the room feel the weight of it. "She's going to be okay," Doc said to Dora in a low voice in the kitchen. "Physically, the hand is clean. The bruise on her collarbone, that's not from tonight." "I know," Dora said. "There might be more we can't see." "I know that too." She looked through the kitchen doorway at Lily, who was now sitting on the big couch, wrapped in a club blanket, holding her hot chocolate with both hands, watching Rosa with those careful, measuring eyes. The eyes of a child who had learned that adults needed to be watched closely because adults were where the danger came from. Dora felt the stone in her own chest press harder. She had been that child. Different circumstances, different town, different kind of damage. But she knew exactly what it felt like to sit in a room full of strangers and calculate, constantly calculate, whether you were safe or whether this was just another version of the same trap. She walked back to the couch and sat down across from Lily. "Can I ask you something?" she said. Lily nodded. "Where did you write that note?" The girl looked down at her hot chocolate. "In the bathroom, at school. I kept it in my sock for 3 days in case I needed it." 3 days. She had been carrying that note for 3 days, waiting for the right moment, the right escape, the right gate to knock on. "How did you know to come here?" Dora asked. Lily looked up. "My teacher, Miss Calloway. She told us once that if we were ever scared and couldn't find a police station, we should find people on motorcycles. She said riders always stop for kids." She paused. "I saw your lights from the highway." Dora sat with that for a moment. A teacher. Somewhere out there, a teacher named Miss Calloway had planted a seed in a classroom that had saved this little girl's life tonight. Dora made a mental note. She was going to find Miss Calloway. She was going to thank her in a way that the woman would never forget. But right now, there was a more immediate question. "Lily," Dora said carefully, "can you tell me where you live?" The girl's jaw tightened. The first real fear Dora had seen on her face since she came through the gate. "I don't want to go back," Lily said. Quiet, firm. The way you say something you've rehearsed 1,000 times in your head because you knew the moment was coming. "You don't have to go back tonight," Dora said. "I promise you that. But I need to know some things so I can help you the right way. Can you trust me with that?" Lily looked at her for a long time, reading her, calculating. Then she said, "My stepdad's name is Gary Pollard. We live on Sutter Road, the Blue House." She said it the way you give someone a loaded weapon and hope they use it right. Dora went outside. She called Spider. His real name was Eddie Reeves, and he was the Iron Magnolia's road captain. The person responsible for knowing things, knowing people, and knowing how to find out what you needed to find out without leaving a trail. He'd been patched in for 8 years. Before the club, he did 3 years in the Army and 2 as a private investigator. He answered on the second ring despite it being 3 a.m. "I need everything you can find on a Gary Pollard, Sutter Road. I need it fast." Spider didn't ask why. That's what she valued most about him. "Give me 20 minutes, he said. She went back inside. Rosa had gotten Lily to talk a little more. Not about the house, not about Gary, but about school. About Miss Calloway, who apparently read stories out loud every Friday afternoon and did different voices for every character. About a dog she used to have named Captain who died last spring. About how she liked drawing horses more than anything else in the world. T-Bone had gone very, very quiet in the corner. That was the sign. T-Bone only went that quiet when something was getting to him in a place he didn't show people. Dora caught his eye. He gave her the smallest nod. He was holding it together. He would keep holding it together. But they were going to talk later. 23 minutes after Dora's call, Spider called back. She stepped outside again. Gary Pollard, 41, 2 prior domestic calls on record. Both dropped. The address is registered to a woman named Karen Pollard, née Harper. She has a daughter from her first marriage. Lily Harper, age 7. Spider paused. There's one more thing. Tell me. Karen Pollard was admitted to St. Luke's Medical Center 4 days ago. She's been there since. I don't have a diagnosis, but she went in through the emergency room. 4 days ago, which meant Gary Pollard had been alone in that house with Lily for 4 days. Dora stood in the wet dark and let the information land. Then she made 3 phone calls. The first was to Sergeant Diana Cruz, who rode with the Iron Magnolia on weekends and happened to be on the night shift at the county police department. The second was to Child Protective Services emergency line, because Rosa had given her the number 3 years ago and told her to save it because one day you're going to need it, and you're going to need it fast. The third was to a woman named Big Joe. Josephine Carver, known to everyone in the Iron Magnolia as Big Joe, was 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered, and had the kind of presence that made rooms rearrange themselves when she walked in. She had been Dora's closest road sister for 16 years. She ran a women's shelter out of the north end of town, operated out of a converted firehouse, which she had funded mostly by winning 2 consecutive charity poker tournaments and one extremely aggressive bake sale. She was also, when the situation required it, the most terrifying person Dora had ever met. And she had a way with children that could only be described as a gift. Big Joe arrived at the clubhouse at 3:45 a.m. in her truck, a large stuffed elephant under one arm and a thermos of actual good coffee under the other. She sat with Lily for 45 minutes. Dora watched from the doorway. She watched Big Joe become everything a child needed in exactly that moment. Soft, unhurried, funny in a quiet way, asking nothing, offering everything. She watched Lily's shoulders, which had been up near her ears since she arrived, slowly come down. She watched Lily fall asleep on the couch with the stuffed elephant, which she had named Emmett within 4 minutes of receiving it, tucked under her arm. Then Big Joe came to the kitchen, closed the door quietly, and her face changed. "How long has this been going on?" she asked. Not loudly, but with a weight behind it. "We don't have the full picture yet," Dora said. "But her mother has been hospitalized for 4 days and she's been alone with the stepfather." Big Joe looked at the ceiling, then back at Dora. "Where is he now?" "Home, as far as we know." "Is Cruz handling it?" "Cruz is already coordinating with CPS. She'll have someone at the house by 6 a.m. Big Joe nodded slowly. "And what are we doing?" Dora met her eyes. "We're making sure that whatever happens at 6 a.m. goes exactly the way it needs to go. And we're making sure that little girl in there never, ever has to feel like nobody came for her." Big Joe looked back through the kitchen window at Lily sleeping on the couch, at the stuffed elephant, at the club blanket pulled up to the girl's chin. "She walked here," Big Joe said. "Not a question. In the rain, 1 shoe, 2 in the morning." Big Joe turned back to Dora. Her jaw was set in a way that Dora recognized. It meant that something had been decided and there was no undeciding it. "Then we ride," Big Joe said. By 5 a.m., the word had gone out through the Iron Magnolia network. Not a call to arms, nothing aggressive. Dora was precise about that. She had been precise about that since the day she founded the club, because she knew the difference between justice and revenge. And she knew that one of them helped and one of them made things worse. This was not a night for making things worse. This was a night for showing up. By 5:30, there were 37 Iron Magnolia members in the clubhouse parking lot. They came in quietly. No revving engines, no drama. They came because word went out, and when word went out, you came. That was the code. Some of them had been woken up from deep sleep. Some of them had been on their way home from late shifts. 2 of them had driven 40 minutes from the next county. All of them were there. Rosa moved between them, keeping everything calm and organized. Doc Martinez had made a second pot of coffee. T-Bone stood at the edge of the lot, arms folded, watching the road. Spider was on his laptop in the corner of the parking lot, running plates, pulling records, making sure everyone had the fullest picture possible before 6 a.m. arrived. And Dora was inside with Lily, who had woken up at 5:15, looked around at the changed situation and said, "Are those your people?" "Every one of them," Dora said. Lily looked out the window at the parking lot full of riders, at the leather and the patches and the faces that were all in their own way turned in her direction. "They came because of me," she said. They came because that's what we do, Dora said. Nobody gets left behind. That's not a rule. That's who we are. Lily was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I drew a picture last week in art class. It was a horse with wings. Miss Calloway put it on the wall. She paused. I didn't think anyone would come for me the way they come for things that matter. Dora felt the stone in her chest again. She pressed it down. Everything that matters gets fought for, she said. You matter, Lily. You have always mattered. At 5:58 a.m., Sergeant Diana Cruz arrived. She was in uniform, professional, precise. But she and Dora exchanged a look that carried 16 years of shared history and the understanding that tonight, they were operating on the same side of the same line. And there was no daylight between them. CPS worker Marlene Ford arrived 4 minutes later. She was new. Dora had never met her before, but she had the kind of quiet competence that came from years of dealing with hard situations and refusing to be undone by them. She spent 8 minutes with Lily before the girl's guard came down completely. At 6:22 a.m., Cruz, Ford, and 2 other officers went to the Blue House on Sutter Road. Dora did not go. That was Cruz's call, Cruz's jurisdiction, and Dora respected the line. But Spider was parked 3 blocks away with a clear line of sight, and every Iron Magnolia in that parking lot was waiting. The call came at 6:41 a.m. Spider relayed it in 3 sentences. Gary Pollard had been taken in for questioning. CPS had secured emergency temporary custody of Lily, pending a full investigation. Karen Pollard had been notified at the hospital and had reportedly, according to the nurse on duty, cried for 20 minutes straight. Dora walked back into the clubhouse. Lily was at the kitchen table with Big Joe, drawing horses in a notebook that Rosa had found somewhere. She looked up when Dora came in, read her face. Is it okay? Lily asked. It's going to be okay, Dora said. The people who are supposed to help you are helping you now, and we're going to make sure they keep helping you. What about my mom? Your mom knows you're safe. She's getting better. Dora sat down across from her. She's going to want to see you as soon as she can. Lily's lip trembled just for a second. Then she pulled it back together with a dignity that had no business existing in a 7-year-old face. Okay, she said. Then she went back to her drawing. Big Joe caught Dora's eye across the table. Neither of them said anything. They didn't need to. Outside in the parking lot, T-Bone was standing by his bike. He had his phone out and was looking at the screen. Dora walked over. She didn't have to ask. She knew he was looking at the picture of Grace. I keep thinking, he said without looking up. What if it was her? What if Grace needed somewhere to go and there was nobody? There would be somebody, Dora said, because that's what we built this for. He looked up then. His eyes were red, but his voice was steady. She walked through a rainstorm, one shoe, in the dark, because a teacher told her once that riders stop for kids. Yeah, we have to be that, every time, every single time. We will be, Dora said. We are. T-Bone looked out at the road, at the fog that was starting to lift as morning came. He put his phone back in his pocket, in the front pocket over his chest, where Grace's picture lived. I want to do something, he said, for Lily, and for kids like her. Something that stays. Dora looked at him. She had known Marcus Webb for 9 years. She knew that when he said something like that, he meant it down to the bone. Then let's build it, she said. 3 weeks later, the Iron Magnolia launched what they called the Open Gate program. It was Big Joe's idea, formalized by Rosa, funded in part by T-Bone, who put in the first $3,000 from his own account without being asked. The idea was simple. Any child in the county who felt unsafe could walk to any Iron Magnolia location. The clubhouse, Big Joe's shelter, Doc Martinez's place, Spider's shop, at any hour, day or night. And they would find an open gate, a warm space, and someone who would not send them away and would not send them back until they were safe. They put cards in schools. They got Miss Calloway, who turned out to be a 32-year-old woman named Claire Calloway, who cried when Dora showed up at her classroom door with 37 bikers and a handwritten thank you note from Lily, to help them get the program into the curriculum, not as a scary topic, as a simple truth. If you are ever scared, find a rider. riders stopped for kids. The local paper ran a story, then a bigger paper picked it up. Then something happened that none of them had planned for and none of them quite knew how to process. A national news outlet called. They wanted to talk about the Iron Magnolia, about Dora Reyes, about what a women's motorcycle club in a small town had built, quietly, in the gap between the systems that were supposed to protect people and the reality of the people who needed protecting. Dora gave the interview sitting on her bike outside the clubhouse. She wore her cut. She wore her rings. She kept her hands folded in her lap and she talked the way she always talked. Steady, direct, without performance. They asked her what made her open the gate that night. She thought about it for a moment. "A child knocked," she said. "You opened the gate. That's it. That's the whole answer." They asked her what she would say to Gary Pollard. She looked at the camera for a moment. "Nothing," she said. "I don't talk to people like that. The law handles people like that. I handle the ones they leave behind." They asked her what she would say to Lily. Dora was quiet for a long moment. "She already knows," she said finally. "She was there. She saw it herself. But if she's watching," she paused, looked directly into the camera. "You are the bravest person I have met in 22 years on the road. And the Iron Magnolia is yours, whenever you need it, for as long as we ride." 4 months after that night at the gate, Karen Pollard was discharged from St. Luke's Medical Center. She had been treated for a condition that required surgery, recovery, and more fight than most people would have had. She had that fight. She came out the other side. The first place she went, before her own house, before anywhere, was the Iron Magnolia Clubhouse. She stood at the gate where her daughter had stood, and she knocked. Dora opened it. Karen was thin and pale, and her hands were shaking slightly, and she looked like someone who had been through the worst storm of her life and had not yet fully believed she was through it. She said, "I need to thank you." Dora said, "You don't." Karen shook her head. "I do. I need to say it. What you did for my daughter?" "What Lily did," Dora said. "She did it. She found the gate. She held out the note. She trusted a stranger in the dark. That's all her. We just opened the door." Karen Pollard stood there in the morning light and the tears came and she didn't try to stop them. Dora let her cry. Then she put her hand on the woman's shoulder and walked her through the gate. Rosa was inside. T-Bone was inside. Big Joe was inside. And Lily was inside, sitting on the big couch, drawing horses. When she saw her mother come through the door, she put the notebook down very carefully, the way you put down something important so you can do something more important. And she ran. Later that afternoon, Dora sat alone on the porch with her coffee. The same porch, the same mug, the same highway in the distance. The fog was gone. The sky was the kind of blue that makes you remember why you started riding in the first place. Spider came out and stood next to her. "You hear about the Gary Pollard thing?" he said. "I heard. They found 2 more cases, different county. He's not getting out." Dora nodded. She said nothing. "Also," Spider said, "T-Bone's program. 3 more clubs reached out. They want to implement open gate in their areas. 1 in Texas, 1 in Tennessee, 1 in Oregon." Dora looked at the highway. 22 years. She had been riding for 22 years, and she had built this club and this family and this code out of everything she had survived and everything she refused to let break her. She had built it because she knew that the road gave you things that nothing else could. Freedom, belonging, purpose. The particular kind of loyalty that only comes when you have chosen your people, and your people have chosen you. She had built it because she knew that gates exist for a reason, and gates can be opened or closed. And the Iron Magnolia had made its choice a long time ago. She took a sip of her coffee. "Tell T-Bone to handle it," she said. "He built it. He leads it." Spider smiled. "He's going to lose his mind." "Good," Dora said. "He deserves to." She looked at the highway one more time. Somewhere out there, right now, there were children who didn't know yet that there were people who would stop for them, who would open gates for them, who would sit in the rain and read notes written in crooked letters by hands that were shaking and scared and still reaching out. She finished her coffee. She put on her helmet. She rode.